2015 episode 17 of Changes. I'm Sally Ember, Edd, and this is our ongoing live conversations with authors that happen almost every Wednesday from 10 to 11 Eastern Time USA. Today we are greatly honored and privileged to have as our guest Wendy van Camp. Wendy, tell us about you.
Well, hi everybody. My name is Wendy van Camp. I'm a rather new author, I guess. I've just published my first ebook. It's called The Curate's Brother, a Jane Austen variation of Persuasion. And it's basically a story about how the Persuasion novel got started, what the characters did to meet originally and what happened to them, which set off the novel that Jane Austen wrote. But that's not the only thing I've written. I've been publishing short stories on and off for the last several years. And I've been working on my big project, which is a steampunk trilogy loosely based off of characters of Alice in Wonderland, which hasn't come out to be read yet, but I'm hoping to have it, at least the first installment of it, finished sometime this year.
Now, when you have an installment, are you planning to put any of that up on Wattpad or Serial, Juke Pop, anything like that?
No.
So how are you going to be introducing it?
Well, it'll be introduced as a book on Amazon. I do do a little bit of promotion on my website beforehand. For instance, I'll do a cover reveal, and then I will maybe do an excerpt, and then finally I will launch the book. And if you're on my mailing list for my newsletter, you might get a little extra goodies that way too.
Okay, so people who are interested in being on your mailing list can go to your website, which is right under your name here, nowastedink.com. And I want to remind people that they can also find your current story and more information about you on Amazon on your author page. And even though it's not all showing right here, you can see it on our event page on the Google Plus event page for today's Changes episode. And also, you're on Twitter. Now, are you active on Twitter, Wendy?
I am very active on Twitter. I have a little over 20,000 followers, and I basically do Twitters every day, all the time.
You're a regular tweeter.
Huh?
You're a regular tweeter.
Absolutely. A lot of my tweets are not really from me, about me. I pick up things that I think are interesting to fellow writers or readers of science fiction, and then I put links up to articles or to other things. But then I also put in little comments about like what I'm writing for the day, or you know, just little doodads, or maybe quotations that I think are kind of pithy. And we go from there. People seem to like it.
And so people can find you and follow you at WVAN Camp. WVANCAMP, that's your Twitter handle. And I'm really excited that I found you on Twitter because I've been enjoying a lot of your tweets. I don't tend to scroll through things a lot, and I don't really have the time to do that I would like to do that, but I sometimes find things that I really appreciate, and mine are cross-posted. Do you do cross-posting from Twitter to other platforms?
Not as much. To me, Twitter is sort of the bottom of the ocean. Most of the places that I do things at, they all head toward Twitter. So for me, it's the final destination. I do sometimes do retweets from other people that tweet to me. I also belong to a couple of author writing societies, and I do promote other people in my societies on my Twitter feed. But other than that, no. To me, Twitter is sort of the end result.
Okay, because I have sort of a cross-posting, and I've never quite figured out which direction is which. So it goes from Pinterest to Twitter, it goes from Twitter to Facebook, it goes from Facebook to Twitter, it goes to Google Plus from my blog, it goes from my blog to Twitter, then Twitter goes back to Facebook, but my blog already goes to Facebook. So I end up with things appearing multiple places, multiple times, and I can't sort it out. And I must not be the only person with this problem.
Well, actually, I have a system that I've developed, which is part of my author platform, and I really feel that it's been successful for me. Because here I am a brand new author, and yet my first book is doing quite well. So,
tell us your system. We all want to know.
Sure. What you do is you start out with your blog, and I really prefer having a blog over just a plain website. It is a lot more work. However, what you do helps build your readership. The posts bring people to you as a writer, and I think it's very necessary for you as a writer to be writing blog posts and be a participant in the blogosphere. If you're not out there meeting people, doing the virtual handshake, people are not going to know who you are, and they're not even going to give you a chance with your book. People have met me online via various social media, and because of this, they will give my book a chance, and hopefully they like it. And like I said, things have been very positive with my first book. I'm hoping for even better as time goes on. And I really credit my author platform for it. But there is a method to what I do, a method to the madness, you might say. But I consider my blog to be my base camp. This is where my formal interaction with people begins. Anything you find on my blog is going to be very professional. It's going to be, maybe I wouldn't say formal, but it's more of what I do as a writer. You will not find posts about my cat or my dog. You will not find little kitty pictures. You will only find things that fit my format that I've predetermined of what I want to put out. Now, basically...
Well, yeah, I know that, and I'm putting it up now for people to see it because I think that's important. I want them to see a little bit about your website and let them see what you have on it. Say, for example, you've got writing credits.
Yeah, that's rather important. It's the bibliography, and you need to put down what you've published so people can find it. And as you notice, I put down links. Now, not only do I have short stories and my ebook, I also have a lot of nonfiction articles that I've been writing down through the years, and I put links to that. And my poetry is up there as well. So this way,
I'm sorry, I was just going to point out that way over on the right, you also let people sign up for your quarterly newsletter.
Correct. Big graphic over there. Hopefully you can't miss it. But
now, what do you put in your newsletter that's different from what you do, say, on a weekly basis?
Well, the newsletter really just highlights what I'm doing. If I'm launching a book that quarter, I will do a write-up on that. If I'm doing a coupon for the book, the coupon code will be in the newsletter. I also put down public appearances where you can find me. I'm out at a lot of conventions, and so people can see me there. I'm also doing a salon reading next month, and so that will be listed. If it's not in the newsletter, generally I'll put an announcement on the blog.
And then you start out with your About page. That's your splash page, right?
Yes. About, no, that's not my splash page. About is just me. It lists a little brief history of myself, puts down a few of the interviews that I've done. And so if you're a little more interested about me as an author, you can go over there and click on some of my old interviews that I've done with other people and learn a little bit more about me.
So which page do people come to when they first go to your website? What's your splash page then?
They actually come to my latest blog post. I feel that you just want to get right to the matter, and so if you just click on No Wasted Ink, it'll take you to my current blog post, which I believe is my article about steampunk. Whoops, nope. Sorry about that. It's No Wasted Ink Writers Links. I do that every Monday.
Right, because that was after your steampunk post. Okay.
Oh, that's true. That's true. I generally post 3 times a week. Monday is always my link write-up, link roundup. And what I do is when I find articles on the internet that I feel are useful for writers, I will put a link to it. And I always do 10 every Monday. And it's actually one of the more popular posts on my blog. People seem to really like the roundup. Some of them even just come, I think, for that. Wednesdays, I do author interviews where I interview science fiction and fantasy authors. And alternately, I will do a book review on a classic science fiction or fantasy book. Occasionally, I also do classic literature. These are all books that have influenced me as a reader and as a writer throughout my life. So they're kind of my favorites. Some of them are Hugo winners. Some are kind of ones you may not have heard of before, but they're ones that I read and have stuck with me, and so I've done reviews on them. And then on Friday, I write articles. They're not always about science fiction. They're usually generally writing craft kind of articles. But sometimes I will go to local events in the Los Angeles area and I'll cover them. For instance, I covered a write-in that took place on Newport Beach here in California. I did a write-up about the UCLA Writers Fair and other things. Just things that I think would be interesting to fellow readers and writers.
What's a write-in?
A write-in is a place where you go, like a coffee house, where you meet other writers and you gather together to work on your projects together. So there's not a lot of talking necessarily that goes along, but it's almost like having a trainer at a gym. So you make an appointment with your trainer to go to the gym, and the trainer works with you, and it helps you write more, or rather work out more, because you know someone's expecting you to be there. So a lot of writers I know set up appointments with each other to meet at coffee houses, and it's just like a regular meeting, like every Monday night or whatever. You might show up at a certain place and buy yourself a cup of coffee, or maybe get a sandwich or whatever, and you sit down, and for an hour or two you write on your project, whatever it may be.
And then do they get together and talk at the end, or do they just go home?
Oh, well, we do chat and socialize, of course, but yeah, when you're done, you go home. Yes.
Wow, that's really interesting. I've never heard of that. I know people who have writer groups where they get together and do critiquing or supporting or highlighting or showcasing some new work, or get feedback of some kind, or take turns having a speaker and have that person inspire them, and then give little reports on works in progress. But I've never heard of just going somewhere and writing, hardly interacting, and then leaving. That's just really fascinating to me. But you're right, it is like a gym.
It's sort of a new way for writers to meet. It started from NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month.
Yeah.
And what we do in the month of November, where we write 50,000 words toward a new novel project, that's what we do every year. But what we do is we all gather together and meet to write together. And that's where it really started. Maybe 10, 11 years ago is when NaNoWriMo started, and where the concept with Chris Beatty started. He's the man that developed NaNoWriMo. And that's how it started. My local writing group, in fact, is basically a group of people from NaNoWriMo who so enjoyed just getting together to write their projects together that they formed a writing society in my local area. So, and they don't do writing critique groups or a lot of this other stuff. They just meet to write together, and it's become a rather social thing. We just meet at the local coffee house and chat about life and whatever, and then we get down to it. For an hour or two, our group leader says, "Okay, everybody, shut up. It's time to work," and then we just sit down and we get to work. And
that is so great. Now, there's a movement afoot around the world called co-working, which has self-employed people or people who are contract workers who ordinarily work at home or float around a lot, co-leasing a place or subleasing from each other or whatever, so that they can come together and literally have a water cooler and a coffee pot to gather around when they take breaks. But mostly they're off in their own little corners or their desks or whatever doing their work. And then they might have lunch together, or a couple of them might get together. But it's just a way not to be so isolated when you're working independently.
Yeah, as writers, we tend to be rather isolated, and in the old days, you never had contact with anybody. But if you belong to a group that does a write-in, you're able to at least talk with other writers and get ideas, talk about what software to use. It's very helpful, or just to bounce ideas off of other people. Now, I do a writing critique group, which is just a science fiction group, and that is more formalized. We basically submit our stories ahead of time. We read them. We do critiques of it, and it's a little more formal. It's not as loose as the write-in, but each serves their own purpose. And I'm finding lately I am doing more writing critique group because I have so many writing projects going on. Now that I'm publishing and still doing my writing platform and everything else, I don't have as much time to just go out and do a write-in anymore.
So how do people find write-ins? Do you think they're on meetup.com, or how else would they, like, Google the word write-in?
That is a very good place to find it. I know our OC Writer group, we do have a meetup page, and you can sign up for it and just loosely join the organization. We don't charge anything for that, by the way. If you want to join the OC Writers, it's perfectly free because we're very informal.
Now, just for people who aren't familiar, OC stands for Orange County, California?
That is correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's just a very loose group of writers who got together because they enjoyed writing together. But we've kind of organized ourselves a little bit more. We have the meetup to list where our write-ins are. And we started with just one main write-in and then branched out. Now I think we have 5 or 6 going weekly in our area. And the only criteria is that the write-in is in Orange County, California, somewhere. And Orange County is rather large, so we're covering quite a large area at this point. But
well, I think Meetup.com is really coming into.
Now we have 200 or 300.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I just said we're growing. We started with about 15 people, and now last count, I believe we're up to 200 to 300 people in our group.
Wow.
So it's been doing well, and I really credit Meetup because it just let people know we were there. And there's a lot of writers in our area, but nobody knew who anybody was. But with Meetup, we were able to tap into the electronic blogosphere, so to speak, and find each other.
Now, the other place that California has really done a good job with connecting writers is the California Writers Association and all the local chapters. Do you belong to that and the local chapter?
I don't think I am. I do belong to IWASC, which is Independent Writers of Southern California. I also belong to another group called the Coffee House Writers, but they're more in kind of Riverside, San Dimas kind of area. And then I have the OC Writers. The other one I have not heard of, but that's okay. There's a lot of writers here in the LA area.
No, the California Writers Association is a statewide organization for writers. It's been around for probably over 100 years, and a lot of the chapters have been around almost that long, and they have presidents and vice presidents and treasurers and a board, and they have conferences, local and statewide and regional. And then I belong to 3 or 4 of them up in the northern and San Francisco Bay Area, California area before I left. And they're very supportive and interesting groups of a variety of writers, nonfiction and fiction, all different genres and all different stages of the careers. And they generally have meetings once a month, but some of them meet more often, and some of them meet the way you're describing, where they just meet to write. Mm-hmm. And then some of them have little mini critique groups that are genre specific, or that are specific to where they are in their career path, like how early on they are, or whether they write short or long fiction, or poetry, or things like that. And then the larger group meets about once a month and generally has a speaker or a food thing going on, and then also might break up into smaller groups that are related to genres or projects, and people can bring their works and sell them or just talk about them, or they do book signings together. They have events of other kinds, so it's very supportive. I know they have a lot of chapters in Southern California, and you might want to find out about them just because you might be a speaker that they might want to have come in and talk about an author platform or anything else you want.
That's true. I know IWASC is similar. They have satellites in pretty much all the areas in Los Angeles. They also host what they call reading with IWASC, where people who are members can read their work, and it's podcast and things of that nature. And then they have panels and they have workshops and things like that. So that it's actually been rather beneficial to me. And I do enjoy it. It's a very large group. I think our panel meetings usually have 150 to 200 people in the audience that come and listen. So it's been nice. But I like to balance it with the smaller groups too. You kind of get a little bit more personalized with the smaller groups, and then I have the larger one where I learn more, maybe the more professional kind of thing.
Right, right. Well, one of the things I wanted to make sure we talk about would be your science fiction slash steampunk slash fantasy writing. And I wondered if you wanted to talk about how you got into steampunk, because it's not something that everybody knows about or would be interested in if they knew about it, but then some people are really involved in it. It's like one of those love it, hate it kind of things, or ignore it, love it. So
Mhm.
tell me about your journey to steampunk.
Well, I guess it all started with reading Tim Powers' The Ambience Gates. Um,
How do you
it
spell that? What was that title?
Ambience Gates, I believe. I may be pronouncing it wrong, but it was a book that was written, oh gosh, in the mid '80s, late '80s, and it was about this college professor who goes back through time, and he does a lot of time travel, but it was all in Victorian England. Well, Tim Powers is part of a writing group here in Orange County, California, very local to me, and he and two other authors, Jeter and Blaylock, kind of got together and developed this subgenre of science fiction. And it didn't even have a name at first until Jeter decided to write to Locus magazine. And he says, "Oh, we're developing this kind of gonzo historical kind of subgenre, and we don't really know what to call it. Maybe we'll call it steampunks." And that's where the name came from, because his letter, I guess, was published. And the three of them started writing these stories that were loosely based off of Jules Verne and H.G. Wells sort of writing. Basically, Victorian England in an alternate history stays strong, and their culture stays strong throughout the world. And their technology, which is based on steam engines, is what becomes the predominant technology in the world. So gasoline engines really didn't take off. Our whole electronic, digital kind of stuff never took off. Everything is all based on locomotive, steam engine kind of things. If they have air power, it's zeppelins and it's or airships. The dress code would be like rather antique military uniforms. The women would be in Victorian costumes with corsets. Um, there's a kind of a movement of people to wear goggles, that kind of thing, that comes from the airships pilots, which are a rather heavy trope in steampunk. And it just sort of
I just
developed
have to
there.
interrupt for a second. It sounds really unappealing from the woman's point of view. I don't get it.
Not
Like,
at all.
first of all, corsets. Like, why would anybody want to glamorize that?
Corsets are actually quite comfortable if you wear them. I do wear a corset occasionally in costume. It basically keeps your stomach in, helps your posture, and once you get used to it, it's actually rather comfortable to wear. I know some women that wear them all the time because of that, because it helps straighten your back and keep you more upright. I don't find them confining at all. It's finding one that fits you properly and wearing it properly that is the issue. But it's actually, steampunk is not all about wearing corsets. It's just basically using that old Victorian kind of ideal and just coming forward with it. A lot of people will wear the top hats and things like that. It's not necessarily Victorian. It's Victorian reimagined.
So, do they have slaves?
Not that I'm aware of.
And what
Only
about the
if
whole class system?
the class system usually is a part of steampunk, but when you write steampunk, you got to remember it's science fiction, and a lot of modern ideas work its way into that Victorian ideal. So a lot of things that we take for granted, like no slavery and things like that, do work themselves into the Victorian steampunk. I have an author friend who writes steampunk, and she's a lesbian. She likes to write about lesbian marriages during the steampunk era and how it was more widely accepted than it would be in present day, and which it was actually historically. People kind of turned a blind eye to it more during that time period than maybe we do now, and we're kind of coming full circle and accepting that kind of thing a little bit more in our present day society. However, when you looked at the gay men, they were not as much accepted. In fact, if a man was caught during Victorian time to be gay, he might be put to death. It was considered a crime. So that too has changed a little bit down through the ages. But
So yes,
when you write steampunk, you really got to pick and choose your elements. With me, I don't tend to write about a gay aspect because that's not something that really interests me. But if it does, you can work it in however you feel it's appropriate.
So I've been reading a series of novels for many, many years that are written by an author who uses several different names, but these are written under the name of Amanda Quick. I think her real name is Jane Ann Krantz, or it might be Jane Castle. I never know which one is the real name. Do you know who I mean?
I have never heard of this person.
Okay, well, she writes a whole series of novels that I think would be considered steampunk in the sense that they're in that era, and they involve a lot of odd semi-magical psi abilities and a little bit of odd uses of technology with crystals, and there's some things that are on a whole other planet that's similar to this one, but it has all of these alien technologies going on that enhance the psi or don't, and there are all these genealogical traits that come down through the generations of the people who really have these in big amounts, and then some people who only have small amounts of this talent is what they call it. And I think that would be probably what her genre is, but I don't think she knows that.
Well, you got to understand that steampunk is not necessarily about airships and technology. The Victorians also had a rather heavy respect for spiritualism, and she's probably tapping into that kind of supernatural spiritualism that was very prevalent during that time, and that's also part of steampunk.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, you might like those books. There's a lot of them. She's got several different mini-series, little trilogies with the similar characters or families that are over, you know, like the brothers or the sisters or the generations. And, you know, they're just fun. They're always romantic. Always. And I find that when somebody, I don't know if you've come across this with someone who's written a lot of books. She's written probably 100 or more altogether in all her different nom de plume. She's a little bit like Nora Roberts in that way. And I find that after a while there's just a sameness to the ways that her plots go and the ways that her characters are depicted, and her male romantic leads are almost interchangeable with each other. Her female romantic leads are almost interchangeable with each other. And people must like that because she sells a bazillion books. But the thing that I object to in hers, and I wonder if it's true in the ones you've been reading, is this idea that a woman's virginity is this big prize, and that the man who captures that is somehow the victor, and that some of these women are in their 20s and late 20s, and they're going to bestow this on someone. Is that a part of steampunk that you're aware of?
Well, it's a part of how culture was back in that era, basically throughout the world. This comes back to, we didn't know medically how to determine who the father of a child was back then. The only way it could be determined is if a woman was chaste to begin with and then only had sex with her husband. And so a lot of our cultural methods, I guess, have grown up from that. And, you know, this has been going on for thousands and thousands of years. It's only been very recently that we now can determine who the father of a child is medically. And so perhaps because of this, some of our cultural aspects are changing. But honestly, I think virginity is something that protects women when they're young. They don't necessarily need to go out and be promiscuous or anything like that. I don't really see any value in that, too. I think it's nice to save yourself for somebody who is special to you first. Now, I don't know if you necessarily need to wait until you're married, but at least be in a stable relationship with somebody who means something to you and who you mean something to them. But I don't know. It's I don't think it's necessarily a part of steampunk. I just think it's a part of culture.
It's in a lot of romance genres that aren't steampunk. I would agree with you. And it's very controversial because it really flies in the face of independence and equality between men and women. And it really looks at women still as a kind of property, that their body is something to be displayed, conveyed, and distributed. And so there's a lot of political and social talk about that you and I don't have to get into. But I think it's interesting that it pervades into steampunk and into science fiction and social fantasy and all speculative fiction, I think. And it's one of the areas that Ursula K. Le Guin has been just brilliant in her writing, I think, about the way she looks at gender and relations between sexes and parenting
I'm a
and
big
all
fan
those
of
things, you know?
Le Guin, too. I really enjoy her books. I've read pretty much everything she's written.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, she has been speaking extensively about this. And yeah, I think there is a bias in science fiction still today, which is more of a male-dominated field. And if women are treated equally in science fiction, in the stories, sometimes the male readers may not like it as much. But I think this is changing, and I honestly think that as more women science fiction writers and fantasy writers come forward and produce more work where there are strong female protagonists, that people will start getting used to it more and more, and eventually this old way of looking at things will basically become passé and disappear. I firmly believe in equality, and I've always read books that were more about women being equal, women picking up the sword and going out and being the adventurer, as opposed to just being waiting to be rescued. And that's how I've lived my life. I mean, I've always been a professional woman. I've been anything from a TV producer, I've been a school teacher, I've been a director. I've always been in positions where I have been in control of my own destiny. It doesn't mean I didn't get married. In fact, I was so independent when I did get married, people were shocked because they just thought I was such an independent woman that I could never want to get married or even take my husband's last name. When I accepted my husband's last name, I think people almost fainted. But I kind of prize being connected and being married. It's been very good for me. I like having a companion in my life. And I firmly believe in marriage and promoting it. I don't see anything wrong with it. And I would hope people continue to marry, and it just keeps going on.
Okay. Well, you know, that brings up
Doesn't
something
interfere
that,
with independence.
what?
I said marriage does not interfere with independence.
Okay, okay, that's a position a lot of people would agree with. Interested in something you and I talked about before we started that has to do with your independence, which is your career as a gemologist and a jewelry maker, which led you to conventions. So tell us about your life at conventions, because I haven't been to any, but my niece is a big fan of Comic-Con in San Diego and has been going there for years and tells me lots of stories. So tell me about your convention life.
Well, I've been a regular attendee of conventions since my college days. I actually went to science fiction conventions even before I became a artisan jeweler and gemologist. But I went just to hear the authors, to see what the latest in science fiction was, because I've been reading science fiction and fantasy since I was in grade school. So this is a genre that appeals to me, and being able to meet the authors or to meet the television stars in the science fiction television shows was really exciting to me. Later on, when I became an artisan jeweler, I began to sell my jewelry there. I would book a table, and I would become a what they call a dealer. And sometimes I now use the art shows in the same way. I will basically book a table at the art show. I'll put my jewelry there, and the art show will run the sale as a boutique, and they take care of the taxes and all that kind of stuff. And at the end of the show, I just pick it up. What I like about the art show is now that I'm an author, I can attend a science fiction convention or a literary convention, still sell my jewelry, but now I get to attend the convention as an attendee and be able to meet and chat with people, both as an artist and also now as an author. So it's kind of the best of all worlds.
So what's your best story? Who did you get to meet that was really exciting for you?
Oh, gee, I've met so many authors. Actually, I was a huge fan, well, I still am a fan, of Jack L. Chalker. And he just happened to come to LostCon. It was, I think, about a year before he died. And he was giving a lecture about his books. And I've always been such a huge fan. And I used his novels to help my brother take an interest in reading. My brother was not very good in school, and he just never would pick up a book, and he thought all books were bad, you know, that kind of thing. And I said, no, why don't you try the Lord of the Diamond series by Jack Chalker. I think you would like it. And it's a story about a kind of a secret agent dude who's cloned into 4 different people, and each clone is sent to a different planet in order to take it over, basically, for this Federation Star Federation, and basically take over each planet so that they would be able to join the Federation. And of course, the original would just stay in the Star Federation and never have to leave. So that's why he did it. He thought, for some reason, he thought he would not have to go, but of course, every single one of the clones had his memories, and so he had to basically go to all 4 worlds. But the story was very swashbuckling, about a traditional kind of He-Man hero who has the woman fawning on him and all this kind of stuff. But there was also the level of writing of Jack Chalker is very good. And some of his books, like for instance his Well World series, is very highly regarded in the science fiction community. But I just felt these were juvenile enough to appeal to my, you know, very young teenage brother. And he got into the books, he loved them, and it actually got him to start reading. His English teacher sent me a thank you note, and the rest is history. In fact, he even occasionally goes, Ed, you remember those books you gave me back when? I go, yes, I do. But anyway, I went to Jack Chalker and I told him the story about how I got my younger brother, the firefighter, to learn to read books, and he really was delighted about it. And during his lecture afterwards, he worked in the 4 Lords of the Diamond, which was an older series of his. He probably wouldn't have brought it up had I not told him the story. And he did, basically, when he talked about the books, he did look directly at me, so it was for me. And I'm very grateful because, of course, he did have a heart attack and died the following year. So had I not taken away time from my table, where I was working there at the convention as a jeweler, and I had to have somebody watch my table for me so I could slip away just to go hear Jack Chalker for an hour. But it was
exciting. So when you have a table, I notice you're sitting in your studio right now, and you have a table behind you. Is that where you made your jewelry?
Yes. Over here is my jeweler's bench. It's a very sturdy wooden table. It has pull-outs so that it'll catch the metal dust so it doesn't get all over things. And then I have what is called a jeweler's pin that I can put into a center slot in the table, and I can do my sawing, my hammering. I do a lot of wire wrapping and coiling, and all my tools that I need are there. I have a Fordham flex shaft. I have a grinder. I have a nice lighting system. You might be able to see my torch back there, too. I have a little tiny torch. I don't do a lot of torch work in here.
So you're wearing one of your own bracelets. Can we see it?
Yeah, here. Let's see. We'll hold it up here for you to see. This is something that I've made. It's made of fine silver, and it has been woven into a Celtic knot.
Is that called wire wrapping?
This one is more wire weaving. This one isn't necessarily wrapping, although I did wrap the little clasp that I made here. So wire wrapping would be more my earrings. And here I can take one out for you. This would be considered wire wrapping. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, I see, around the middle there.
Yeah, I actually made the ear wire, the little cone here on my pliers. I wrapped it around to create the shape. I hammered the ear wire up here so it's this does not move. It's been work hardened, and then I wrapped the wire around the stone here. Let's see, I can turn this.
And what kind of a stone is that? Is onyx?
This is not onyx. It's actually rainbow obsidian, and when the light is just perfect on it, it shows a silver cat's eye in the black stone.
Nice. I can see a little bit. Oh, that's beautiful. So you work with stones, crystals, all different kinds of amber and rocks, things like that?
I do work mainly with natural stones. I do a little bit of art glass as well. All my art glass is purchased from various artists who work out of their homes. I buy wholesale amounts, which is why my prices are reasonable. And I also go to general stone vendors. Like, for instance, I'll go to the big show in Tucson, Arizona in February, where maybe 52 wholesale shows of stone vendors gather together from around the world. And from there, I can get probably the best prices anywhere in the world on the stones that I select. I don't really deal with precious stones like diamonds or sapphires or things like that. They're just simply too expensive for me to deal with. I generally like to use semi-precious stones, things like jade or tiger eye, lapis lazuli, things of that nature, which are not quite so expensive, but I find that I really love the textures of the stone, and I like the natural kind of properties of it. I tend to purchase stones that do not have dyes put into them. I like to choose things that are natural to the stone. So say I have a little bit of rhodochrosite. It may be pink with striations of white in it. That is natural how it comes out of the ground. And a lot of my customers, I actually have customers of all ranges. I mean, I make jewelry that would appeal to more conservative customers. I make jewelry that might appeal to more wild and free kind of customers. I try to make jewelry that would appeal to a range of skin tones, so it's not just all to one sort of kind of person. And I find it really works well. I have lately picked up a line of crystals that I make in dependents, and I do notice there's a lot of people that like to pick them up and to judge how their auras react with the crystals. And I've actually researched how to store them so that it accentuates supposedly the crystal's energy. And the people that look for that kind of things, they actually flock to me because they say there's something about my stones that seems to draw them, and they're more strong than stones they might find from other people. Well, this is because I've done my research, as any small business person might do, and I store them in the way that they say they want their stones to be stored. And I don't know if I believe it or not, but I respect my customers and their beliefs, and I basically give them what they want, and it makes them happy. I get sales, which makes me happy, and that's the way it works. It's
So
called
in my understanding of things, I'm one of these people that I consider to be a synthesizer, meaning I take what people say and what they show me and what I learn and what I know, and I put it together and look at the metaphors and look at the threads and look at the themes and patterns and kind of understand how they fit together. So I'm weaving together your steampunk interest and your Alice in Wonderland interest and your interest in Jane Austen, which all seem to be kind of an historical affection, I guess I would call it, and then looking at how you really are finding the naturalness of stones to be appealing and the naturalness of the metals and the maybe whatever else of your fabric or whatever else you deal with in your jewelry making, and that you really also appreciate the opinions and the feelings or the beliefs of the people, and that you're not willing to just stay in one particular kind of writing or jewelry making or anything, because you recognize a fascination with a lot of different parts. So you go across genres and you go across jewelry styles and you go across stone types, and so I think that's very interesting because it means that you have this integration of your creativity that I'm noticing that is probably very good for you. It probably helps you really boost your creativity. Would you feel that way?
Well, my husband has often told me I'm the most creative force of nature he's ever met. So, but yeah, I live to create. That's what I do. I'm an artist. I've always been an artist. Believe it or not, I did have a short stint where I tried to be an engineer, but I was the only one showing up in my college chem lab with a guitar in one hand and a clarinet in the other. Eventually, I figured out I just didn't belong in the engineering department. So that's when I moved on to filmmaking, and the rest is history. I really enjoy creating things. I really loved being a television producer director, and I did that for about 15 years. Then I kind of segued into becoming an artist, and basically because I was just kind of burnt out and tired, and I happened to be at the local craft fair, and I saw people sitting out in the sun under their canopies making a living. I thought, how cool is that? And so I just developed a business where I could sit out in the sun on the grass and chat with people, and I love talking about stones, of course. It's just it was a hobby of mine at the time. And it's a great way to make a living. I really love the lifestyle of an artist. I like being able to move from location to location. I'm never in the same place for a long period of time. I'm out on the road sometimes with my work, but it allows me to meet more people, allows me to experience more locations, and yet, in the end, I always come to my home base here with my husband, and I'm always happy to come home.
Well, that is really cool to hear that. And I want to remind people that you're doing a special event on Facebook in about a week. You want to talk about that?
Well, yeah, this is an Indie Author Appreciation Week. For a full week, 60 authors will be talking about their book, doing giveaways. And the event is set up that if you buy a book from one of the authors, you are put into a drawing for a $50 Amazon gift card. And I believe they have a $10 and a $5 gift card, too. So there's like a first, second, and third prize. And the only way to get into the drawing is by buying a book from one of the authors in the Appreciation Week. And of course, my book, The Curate's Brother, is one of the books you can purchase during the event. And if you do, you're put into the pool for the $50 gift card.
So I have this up on our comments, and I want to just let people know it's on the event page. It starts this Friday, the 9th, and goes for a week till the 16th. And your particular day and time is Thursday, January 15th from 5 to 6 GMT, Greenwich Mean Time. Now, does that mean you're hosting the page at that hour?
Yes, I am. What I will be doing is talking about Jane Austen and her book Persuasion, a little bit about the movies that have come out about Persuasion. There's two main ones that have come out in the last 10 years, but there was also a mini-series of Persuasion done in the 1970s, which I highlight a little bit too. A lot of people haven't heard about it. And I bring up a lot of trivial facts about Austen, and of course I introduce my book, which is a prequel to Jane Austen's Persuasion. But it'll also be a prequel to the books that I'm going to be writing later in the series as well.
Great. So hard to believe, but we are at a quarter of the hour. We have gone through 3/4 of our hour already. And so I want to give you a chance to remind people of where to find you and where your upcoming appearances and projects are. So what do you want us to know about that?
Well, I do have a salon appearance. It's at the OC Jane's Salon. It's basically a reading at a place called the Gypsy Den in Anaheim, California, and it'll be in February. I believe it'll be Thursday night.
Now, it's called the Gypsy Den, you said?
Yeah, it's a local coffee house here in Anaheim. It's near Disneyland, as a matter of fact. But it's in the downtown Anaheim Promenade. It's a rather funky little coffee house. It's privately owned. It's not part of a chain. And this group basically meets there once a month and hosts author readings. And I have been asked to come in and do a reading of my new book. So I will be there in the month of February.
You don't remember which day, though, so they'll just have to go find that.
Yeah, unfortunately, it has slipped my mind.
Okay, well, it's okay. I put it up on the event page with the information you provided, so people who want to see that can go there and see it, and they can Google the Gypsy Den, and I'm sure they'll find their schedule of events, and they'll be able to find you in February. Anything else you want people to know that's coming up for you?
Well, actually, that is about what I have scheduled at this point. I have the one appearance with the Indie Author Appreciation Week, and then I have the Gypsy Den. After that, I will be appearing at Gallifrey One, which is a Doctor Who science fiction convention in Los Angeles. It's at the LAX Marriott, near the LAX airport, of course. And I will be a vendor there. I will be selling my handmade jewelry in the dealer room. I will also have my book on display and flyers that if you're interested in my book, you'll be able to go ahead and use the flyer to find the purchase location for that
So
as
if
well.
people want to find out more about these events or anything else in the future, can they find the exact locations and the dates on your website?
You know, actually, I don't think I have my show schedule on the website. I do sometimes put it on my jewelry website, but right now I don't think I have anything up because I'm at the top of the year and I haven't booked everything yet. About the
Okay.
only show that I have booked so far is Gallifrey one. But eventually I will have things up.
And how do you spell that? Gallifrey?
Gallifrey. Are you a Doctor Who fan?
No, no.
Gallifrey is the planet that Doctor Who comes from. It's, oh my goodness, Gallifrey, I believe.
Okay. All
But
right.
if you're a Doctor Who fan and you hear the word Gallifrey, you know what that is.
Okay, no, I'm not. And then you also mentioned LostCon. Is that Los Angeles's science fiction convention?
Yes. LostCon is the Los Angeles Society Literary Fiction Convention. It's held at the actually at the LAX Marriott again, same location as Gallifrey One, and it's more of a general science fiction convention. It has science fiction and fantasy and horror authors that basically come to talk about their books. Anybody who's in like the science fiction media will talk about their projects. So there's a lot of film projects that come through as well. Lots of great panels. Lots of nice dealers like myself who are selling items that are related to science fiction kind of things. A lot of booksellers come that specialize in science fiction books or movies. You can find a lot of rare and unusual science fiction items there. But most people just come to socialize and have a good time. My science fiction club that I belong to locally, that's kind of their main convention that they attend. So a lot of my science fiction club buddies will come and visit with me because I think we have probably 8 or 9 of them that show up to this particular convention, and it's a lot of fun.
But you forgot the best part of all these conventions, which I know from my nieces going to Comic-Con in San Diego every year, which is that people dress up.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, when I'm sitting at my table, my customers come and they're dressed as Star Trek officers and Borg and Klingons or TARDISes or, oh my goodness, everything under the sun.
Yeah.
I love to take photos, and if you come on my Facebook page, you'll often see photos of me posing with a famous author or with people who are in crazy getup or whatever. And I just love watching it, and I take photos when I can, and I share it with people on my Facebook page.
So for people unfamiliar with it, this is called cosplay, C-O-S-P-L-A-Y, costume play, and they can dress up as non-human or human creatures or characters from a comic book, a movie, a book, or a video game. They can interact in that way, and then there are special rooms where they can go where everybody who's dressed for that particular purpose can get together, and they just have these little mini cons at these conventions, and it's just, I think it's really funny, but some people are just dedicated, like seriously dedicated. This is their big event every year, and we would go on and on about that, but unfortunately we are so close to the end that I need to ask you the big question that I ask every one of my Changes Google Hangout HOA guests. Are you ready?
I guess so.
All right, so given all of the local, personal, regional, state, national, spiritual, environmental, climactic, geographic, political, and any other kind of changes you're aware of, which ones bring up for you a sense of hope or fear, or which ones would you like to speak about right now? Take it away, Wendy van Camp.
I guess I'm speaking as a new and upcoming science fiction and fantasy author. I am rather concerned that much of science fiction has turned very negative and dark, dystopic in effect. And it's been a real trend. And I've even had people that read my work, which is actually more hopeful for the future, where technology works and that helps humanity live in a better way, as not being science fiction because it's so unfamiliar with them now. But if you look back through classic science fiction, a lot of the things that we take for granted today were actually concepts developed in science fiction. Just for example, if you read Robert Heinlein and his book Space Cadet, when the cadets are waiting to go up to the space station, one of them, named Tex, decides to put his phone in his boot. Well, you know, that's a cell phone, right? And we take that for granted. And if you read the book today, you wouldn't even blink. But, you know, back in the 1950s, there was no such thing as a cell phone. And the fact to even put a phone in your boot would be an incredible thing to do. Now it's an everyday concept. This is technology that not only works, but it helps us in our lives. This is basically being erased from science fiction. And I have noticed that other people are starting to speak up about this. In fact, David Brin is an author that has spoken about it quite a bit. And he's saying, what happened to science fiction that changed it? Why are we being so negative? We as authors should be inspiring other people to look to the future with hope, to look at the technological advances that are happening in ways that help promote us as a society, make life better for everybody, and to, as authors, try to think of ways of the technology that's coming, or what we think is coming, and how can it be used for the betterment of humanity instead of always emphasizing how it's going to destroy us, it's going to blow up the planet, oh, everything's going to die. And, you know what? This negativity, I think, is self-promoting. And I think if we, as ourselves today, take a more positive outlook on what's coming from the future, that might perpetuate itself out and make the future more positive in the end. We all manifest things as we live through life. If you have a positive outlook in your own life, if you feel you are in control of your own destiny, usually that becomes the fact of your life. If you feel you are not in control of your life or in control of your destiny, that becomes the way your life comes. And bad things will happen to you with that kind of outlook. If you are positive, positive things will happen. So I really think that in science fiction that we as authors owe it to our readers, owe it to our society to try to be a little more positive and uplifting in what we do. And I would really like to see a change in this negative dystopian trend and to move on and maybe to pick up from the classic science fiction from the 50s, 60s, and 70s where positive thinking was really more the norm. And that's kind of my thing that I've kind of been thinking about.
Well, thank you for bringing that up, because I certainly agree with the part that states that we, as speculative fiction writers, could be focusing more on the utopian or possible improvements that come in the future. And that is certainly the basis for my Spanner series, that I'm looking at a potential utopian future where the aliens are not out to get us, hurt us, or harm us in any way, but that they're actually here to help us and have been around for millennia helping us. And finally, in my series, agreed to let us know that they're here and that there's many other places around the universe, the multiverse in my books, where intelligent life exists in various forms, and that we could interact with them and become friendly and share technology and share other things. And it doesn't have to be an apocalyptic dystopian future at all. I completely agree and appreciate your bringing that up. And I think what happens at this point, because we at this state in our history have had the longest war involvement we've ever had, the stupidity, I have to call it that, in Afghanistan, and finally have ended the armed conflict portion of that program, but none of it should have happened. It was ridiculous. And I think people are despairing because of the economy and a lot of other issues that are not being easily resolved in the climate and other kinds of problems locally and politically that create a lot of despair. And so when you have that feeling pervading a lot of people, then you do give rise to a lot of negativity in the creative arts. And I think that's inevitable. And then at some point it turns again. At some point things might get better. As you said, people might have a more positive outlook, a more positive ability to have that perspective, and things might start to turn. So hopefully that will happen. We can all wish for that. Thank you for bringing that up. Is there anything else you want people to know? We have about a minute left for you to say your thank yous and goodbyes and give any shout outs you'd like to give.
Well, I don't know. I just want to thank people for coming and listening to our jibber jabber here. I hope you enjoy science fiction and you continue to read it. It's a great genre. A lot of interesting ideas that come forward and ideas that inspire the technology of the future. And it's just a great place to be and to participate in. And I guess that's about it for me.
Well, thank you very much, Wendy van Camp, for being my guest today on Changes, episode 17. We had one visitor who checked in late and didn't have a chance to interact, Lon McClure, and he says he's going to leave some comments in the stream for us to look at, so I hope that happens, and then you and I can look at them later when we have a chance. Thanks, Lon, for coming by. I know we'll have a lot of other viewers who weren't able to come at this hour or people who didn't interact, and I encourage you to visit Wendy at nowastedink.com or visit me at sallyember.com. And I'm very excited to have people visit us on our YouTube site with all the Changes episodes, 1 through 16, and now today I'll be putting up 17. And then if you'd like to come in the future, our very next guest is Devora Fox, known as D, and she's going to be here on January 14th, 10 to 11, EST USA. And the week after that, we're having Elizabeth Armstrong of Jazzy Echo, and she'll be here on January 21st. So I want to thank everyone who visits, watches, listens, and comments, asks questions, and interacts. Thank you all for coming and listening. And as I say every week, go well with your changes. Signing off.